We really need to do something about those gardens.
Let me get to them. Smiley face, smiley face.
I agree. Spend some time attacking them. Plenty of room on the right.
Now that's a hotly debated matter of opinion. Let's at least agree to form a committee to discuss the matter of the gardens, and put forward an action proposal.
Burn. Discussion over. Smiley, smiley, smiley.
We'll be sure to include that in the meeting points. I'm just in here getting 4 VP per turn. Surely I am no threat.
You are the biggest threat. Lizards.
I am among a stratified list of threats. I could, in some circles, be construed as threatening.
This attack was uncalled for, really.
The attack was justified.
I need the fucking double fox ones left standing to craft Hiri McGeary. Why the hell you needed to take that away from me?
Make the choice to attack the lizards. Don't attack me, and I won't attack you.
I could be your angle, or you or devil. You can tell it's optimal lizard gameplay, because the table is miserable.
You could also just attack lizards.
No.
I could give you 1 point per turn on charm offensive, if you leave me alone.
Ooh. I'm so impressed. That will put me at 7 VP.
Okay. This is personal now.
It was personal for turns ago, dude.
No. You are playing out of spite, and not for points. This is the definition of a toxic player.
I'm going down. But I'm taking you down with me. Lol.
I'm having a great time playing Root with friends.
Because you were going after the weakest player. Lizards and otters.
Otters are amazing. Finally, someone playing right. No, I go after my points. Told you to weaken fox and lizards. I have a lot to learn, says the player with 7 points. Once cats and lizards were in league, I had to feed the otters.
It will remain a mystery, unless lizards can pull some magic out of their butt.
This telenovela is amazing. Alas, no. My hand is solid yellow. Thus, the real villain was not the birds or cats, but God.
I would replay this as a cat. Show some real strategy. This is a dismal score of 10. Really pitiful. I want to.
But that would be brilliant.
Smiley face. Let me show you some real cat strategy.
Welcome back. If you thought it's weird that I'm doing my intro 2.5 minutes into the video, don't worry, I've got even weirder things to show you. And in case you were wondering why I've uploaded this video instead of my lizard guide, well, shut up, that's why. I've got something pretty amazing to show you today. Sure, it's not rare to run into people who are having big arguments in Root, but what is rare is when they decide to actually rematch the game with each other's factions. Just to reiterate the first 5 seconds of this video, however, these people were great the whole time, and just so you know, I will be dramatizing their reactions for my own entertainment. And hopefully yours. Before we get into the game, however, our otter player from the first game ended up having to leave, and our Woodland Alliance player opened by telling us they were fairly new to the faction. It's the bird and cat players here who have swapped. Right off the bat, I'm surprised to see the cats setting up in one of the lower clearings on the winter map. I've advocated for it myself in my cat guide, but setting up in the top row means you get to claim those 2 double slot clearings to yourself, and it's pretty difficult for anyone to actually get up there to take them away from you. For my part, I started this game with 3 different suited cards, which is pretty ideal as far as lizards go. Well, it would be nicer to have 2 suits matching my starting clearing. With randomized clearings, sometimes it's a bit of a crapshoot, and if you're going to have a decent hand, you may as well have one of everything. I'm going to start out by setting out in this mouse clearing, which means I'm going to have 2 slots right away, and I'll probably end up taking one of the northern clearings, probably the fox, later on, which will probably end up stymieing the birds a bit. If I do end up locking in the birds here, it means that the cats are going to have a lot of room to act unimpeded, so throughout the game I'm going to want to get in their way a little bit more than the birds, but this is all just speculation. The birds are up next, and while they've opened Despot, which makes sense with Woodland Alliance on the board, what they've actually done is they've opened with double build Despot, which I can only respect. Playing double build Despot into Charismatic is one of my favorite openers, actually, and while I don't know what this player is currently planning, it does mean that he's not going to be going after Woodland Alliance cardboard for the entire game, and because of that he's literally using my opening.
Who taught you how to do this stuff?
You, alright? I learned it by watching you.
Well, that was your first mistake, lol. Well, we know what to expect. This development pleases the Cats player, however, who's eager to see the eerie turmoil this early. The real question with this opening is whether or not the Cats are going to fully punish it, and with this faction composition, I don't think it's going to happen. On their turn, the Cats player does throw down a second crafting piece, however, which means they could potentially have either coins or coffin makers here, and since the birds are planning to go into charismatic, having coffin makers would actually be extremely dangerous. There's not too much to talk about on my turn. I build my second garden to get my card draw going, and I do a bit of recruiting. I mentioned that this map's suit distribution was cursed earlier, and it's because rabbit is completely useless. There's only one double slaw rabbit clearing, and it's currently got the keep in it. Our new Alliance player takes a very measured and reasonable build out for their first few sympathy tokens. By putting it in these 3 middle clearings between both the birds and the cats, it's likely that they'll probably lose the outside ones to both of the factions, but the middle one, right next to my own gardens, is probably going to be safe, and it's a great place to set up. Not for me, though. It's terrible for me. The birds continue their build out here, and by moving into cat territory specifically, they fire the opening salvo of this ongoing war between the cat and bird players. Assuming they've managed to find a bird card by now, I would expect the bird player to turmoil next turn, when their roost count is going to give them 3 cards at the end of their turn. On the cat's turn, they end up proving us right about their crafting potential, but it turns out they only have coins, so I don't really have to care just yet. Crafting their workshop that early means that they don't have their third recruiter on this turn, however. With both the Birds and Woodland Alliance up in their business, and lacking both the 2 wood and 3 recruits and the card they would get normally on this turn, the Cats are currently playing from a pretty big deficit. They also find themselves in the position of having to break martial law in order to reinforce that central clearing so that they can rule. While there is already a sympathy in that southern clearing, I want you to keep that workshop clearing in mind, because it's going to come up real soon. My turn. Cats are in a pretty bad way right now, and I've got a handful of fox cards and crafting that I'd like to make use of, so it's time to bully the birds a little bit. I don't want to be all that close to the Woodland Alliance, and I already have a mouse clearing, so we're just going to start setting up in this fox clearing up here. With my remaining rabbit card, I decide to solidify my hold over on this clearing on the right, just in case the birds want to take it from me. Naturally, my efforts are rewarded by being given even more rabbit cards that I cannot make any use of. Fortunately, I have a strategy for just this sort of occasion, and that strategy is complaining. Rather than the southern fox clearing, the Woodland Alliance ends up revolting in mouse, which is actually amazing for me, because so long as that base remains on the board, they can't actually destroy my gardens with sympathy tokens. Make no mistake, I'm going to end up with sympathy in my gardens anyways, but now it's not going to explode. What we do learn from this player, however, is that their impression of the Woodland Alliance is perhaps very different from how they're normally played. With the scant 2 acolytes they have on this turn, they've decided to commit them into giving me another acolyte, which, I mean, thank you. But it's also not what I would call great strategy when you're leaving your base completely undefended next to the despot. They may not understand Woodland Alliance or lizards all that well just yet, but they're new, and it's not really worth getting up their ass about it. The birds seem to agree with this assessment, and end up deciding not to actually battle the free cardboard. While it's possible this was due to a lack of mouse cards to battle with, I prefer to chalk it up to the Erie player giving some leeway to a player who's clearly new. That being said, figuring out the optimal turn for Erie here wasn't as easy as it seems. In their hand at the beginning of their turn, they had a bird card, a fox ambush, and tunnels. They actually haven't drawn a mouse card since the game started. Not only would you need to add a bird card to his decree in order to battle that cardboard, losing him an extra point, but it also means that he's only using his bird move in order to move from mouse into that clearing in the first place. His recruiting makes sense here because it ensures the cats can't just clean up empty cardboard, but it would have been more valuable to have that battle and punish the Woodland Alliance than it would be to craft the sword. What would have been even better, though, would have been keeping that bird card so that you can hit the ground running with your charismatic leader instead of hoping that you draw a bird card at the end of your turn here. Anytime I'm running this strategy myself, that's exactly what I'm doing. This cat's turn is where we end up finding out whether or not the birds will be punished for their explosive opening strategy. It's also where we find out that the cats did in fact have coffin makers, and they craft it now. While they do manage to clear up 2 roosts and build themselves a sawmill, unfortunately the cats are going to struggle a little bit from here on out because they now have to push outwards in order to claim territory rather than working their way inward from the edges. Losing only 2 roosts is also not that huge a loss for the Eyrie at this point in time, as if they're able to build, they'll still end up with 4 points on their turn. On my turn, there's nothing I would like more than to claim both slots of that northern fox clearing, and naturally this is exactly when the outcast swaps to mouse, so that I can't do anything useful with it. I decided that rather than throwing it away on my opponents, I'm just going to use these acolytes to help reinforce my starting clearing a little more. Regardless of whether I can score yet, there is still value in securing rule on that northern fox clearing, so don't mind me, I just live here now. I also decided that since I've been building up warriors in that rabbit clearing, I may as well build a garden here too, because it's decently well defended, and I can probably find space to claim another rabbit clearing later on down the line. The birds probably aren't going to go this far out of their way to attack something that has 4 warriors on it, and pushing them towards the Woodland Alliance and the cats is good for me in the long run. The Woodland Alliance train up another officer and take the opportunity to fix their base defenses from the previous turn. They don't have much else left to do though, so they move on to the Eyrie pretty quickly. The Eyrie actually managed to luck into a bird card for their build column, and they're going to use it to continue their push towards the cats. While it was just a throwaway battle, they do get ambushed by the cats when they're attacking them over in the fox clearing, which allows the cats to keep rule over that wood. Since they haven't been able to build out their recruit column yet, the birds are actually kind of under-defended in their rabbit clearing, and with the board getting very full very fast, this is actually kind of a tense situation for them. Rather than attacking the cats here, it probably would have been safest for the birds to actually pass through the Woodland Alliance area into the southern fox clearing next to my gardens. This would have allowed them to be on opposite sides of the map, and they could have pushed towards the cats from 2 different directions rather than trying to push fruitlessly into an area the cats can repel them from. The cats managed to craft Charm Offensive and a boot, allowing themselves to get even more value out of their rabbit workshops. The cats actually take a kind of suboptimal path here by moving through the Sympathy, then fighting it. If they had fought it first, it would have actually saved them from one instance of outrage, and they would have fed the Woodland Alliance less. It's currently turn 4, and cats have only now managed to get their 3rd recruiter out, and it's come at the cost of basically abandoning all of their sawmills to whatever the birds are going to do on their turn. On top of that, the new recruiter is on top of a sympathy token that the Woodland Alliance can very likely revolt with, making this next round potentially very, very dangerous for the cats. My turn comes up and I am all too happy to get rid of coffin makers using a saboteurs I crafted earlier. Sorry cats, but I ain't putting up with that shit. Looking at my hand, I need a long moment to figure out what I actually want to do here. I'm going to score in mouse, but right now I have 2 lone gardens that aren't really going to accomplish anything by themselves, and while I'd like to make something out of these rabbit cards, there's nowhere to actually be that's worthwhile. Neither the birds nor the cats are in a particularly strong spot right now, so with the 2 warriors I'm going to recruit in rabbit, I may as well just put them on top of both of them. I score with mouse, and I throw some more warriors into the fox clearing that I wish I had. Hopefully I can draw something useful. Wow. Incredible. On an unrelated note, God, I hate being right all the time. Cats probably would have been better off just continuing to stomp the birds in the top left rather than coming down here. Oh, and for those of you keeping track, the Woodland Alliance currently has 6 officers. And if you were thinking to yourself, boy Nev, that sure seems like a lot of officers. Well, you haven't seen nothing yet. If this man is playing Woodland Alliance wrong, then I don't want to be right.
I mean, I can play against 1 player that does not want to win. But 2? This is not a game. It is a mockery.
Oh, and speaking of Cassandra's curse, here comes the Eyrie, right on cue to clean up those undefended sawmills. I admit it, none of us saw that one coming. As much as I love this particular Eyrie opening, it does have one crucial weakness, and that's that if you turmoil off of Charismatic, your game is just kind of over. And that's exactly where we find ourselves now. Birds have been turmoiled down to their worst leaders, cats have been beaten back to their last 3 clearings, the Woodland Alliance have converted half of their warriors into officers and are going on the warpath, and with 5 points and a fistful of fox cards, it's the lizard's time to shine, baby. I cannot build, I cannot score, but by God I can definitely recruit, and it's time to figure out who needs to be slowed down a bit. The dice have slowed down the birds, the Woodland Alliance have slowed down themselves. I suppose it's time I got in the way of the cats. Don't mind me, I just live here now. On the plus side, at least I can craft something, so I'm not totally behind in points this turn. Hopefully I'm able to draw yeah, fuck it, whatever. Thank God for informants. The grand march of the Woodland Alliance has left them without a whole lot to actually do on their turn, but at least they're mobilizing now instead of whatever they were doing. Never mind, I spoke too soon. He does manage to actually achieve his goal of getting all of those warriors killed, so at least he can go back to using them to defend his bases now. It's the Erie's turn, and playing the commander can definitely be a slowly losing battle, but starting with a card and recruit is definitely the right choice here. Crafting Propaganda Bureau, however, is a choice that's going to get you saboteured the second that my turn comes back around. While Propaganda Bureau may not be the most dangerous card in the world, I don't like having it used against me. Maybe it's all that crow PTSD. It's also a card the Erie can make brilliant use of, however, because they can appear in any clearing that they need to still act in. The birds do see the wisdom in taking easy build locations while they still have them, and they give the cats a reprieve for this turn. While leaving 3 warriors in that sawmill clearing is inconvenient for the cats, it does feel like kind of a gamble when the commander's main drawback is its inability to replace its warriors. I'm starting to see why the cats and the birds were arguing earlier, though. Both of these players are the mechanisms of their own destruction. Sure, you took out the roost, but you have 9 cats you can work with. Fighting the Erie on your sawmill and recruiting would have increased your current warrior pool by 30%. The cats are remaining in contention here though, so I guess if it works, don't knock it. It's my turn again, and I finally have the hated Fox Outcast I need to claim both of those build slots. All I need to do is just not roll. Well, at least I've got 2 acolytes to work with now, and if I'm not going to score, I may as well take this top left bunny clearing. Don't mind me, I just live here now. What better way to foster peace between the bird and cat players than by locking both of them in their rooms until they calm down again? More importantly, since I have a bird ambush to work with, and I don't really care if that garden gets destroyed, I can throw it down on this turn in the hopes that the extra card draw I get from it is going to help me pick up something else that's useful instead. I craft saboteurs, draw a second bird ambush just in case, and wish the Erie player good fucking luck. The Alliance player mobilizes their hand and starts trying to get the Erie out of their base so they can finally move from it again. Unfortunately, they get ambushed for their troubles. I guess this is where having 6 officers comes in real handy. This really sucks for the Erie though, because they do have bird cards in hand, which they're going to put into recruit, but unfortunately they only have 1 move and 1 battle, and they have to do something valuable with them. With only 3 roofs on the board and the lizards eagerly looking to take that number down to 2, the Erie decide to just keep what they currently have and gain a point in the process. It may seem like a depressing turn, but at this pace the Erie is just going to win without anyone actually being able to do anything about it. The Cats player moves through more sympathy before fighting it again, and I'm done asking questions. Their sins are punished, however, because they roll a 0-0 against 2 pieces of undefended cardboard. Can't imagine how that feels. Back to my turn, and let me just, let's get rid of you. I didn't need to worry about it this turn, but Saboteurs is the only card that allows the Lizard Cult to swing the Outcast in their favor at the last second. At long last, I can play the video game. It may be turn 6, but by God I will have my Fox Gardens. And to my good fortune, every single Dominance card is currently in the rack, so these useless bird ambushes are finally good for something. I grab 6 points for myself, and I may unintentionally have just stopped the birds from winning on their next turn. This Woodland Alliance player is absolutely ruthless. By destroying that roost, the birds are now pretty much permanently put in a cage unless they can manage to find a way out on this turn. I have never seen anyone battle this much with the Woodland Alliance, and I'm thinking I should start. Since they have proof positive that I am holding a bird ambush, the Eyrie doesn't really want to attack me here because they're only recruiting another 2 warriors this turn. If I hadn't gotten rid of Propaganda Bureau, the Eyrie would have a get out of jail free card on this turn by converting one of the Woodland Alliance warriors. Instead, they commit to destroying all of the cat cardboard so they can build in that clearing, and while those points do add up nicely, their warrior count does not. They go from being within spitting distance of victory to back to being tied with the cats, and thus completes the tour of every Eyrie leader within the same game. I think there's an achievement for that. Suffice to say that this also sucks for the cats. They can rebuild their recruiter for 2 points. That said, there's a world where sympathy tokens make up the difference they need to close out the game before I can get close, so since I've got a Fox Acolyte burning a hole in my pocket, why don't we just go ahead and make sure that doesn't happen. This way, whatever the Eyrie ends up doing in that fox clearing is probably going to make it more difficult for the cats to do anything in there, and if they want to build on the Woodland Alliance territory, they're going to have to outrule me first. It may not be a bulletproof plan, but I figure it does make their lives just a little bit harder. That aside, I can score in every suit, and I can craft a sword for a nice 8-point turn. Being able to recruit on top of their unguarded sawmill just makes the cats' lives that much more difficult. The cats see that I'm capable of winning next turn, but there's not a goddamn thing anyone can do about it. The Alliance is finally getting the hang of spreading sympathy, and while it is pretty late in the game, it's nice to see that they're getting a handle on the faction. They end up spreading said sympathy on top of my gardens, but by this point I'm not terribly worried because I'm pretty sure I could win next turn. The only real lingering question is whether the cats will beat me to it. I'm not entirely sure why, but the birds put a fox card into battle in what I can only assume is an attempt to destroy some of my gardens. I'm a little surprised they didn't try to build in that cat fox clearing, at least to make it harder for the cats, but I suppose in a king-making scenario, it's perfectly fair for them not to want to tip the scales. With only 2 wood left on the board and multiple issues with rule, the cats are, unfortunately, unable to win on this turn. They build another recruiter, taking them up to 27, and then use it to recruit to helpfully defend some of their equipment. But without more wood and no worthwhile crafting to speak of, this is not a cat victory. While I can't fault the cats for their early game struggles, this situation helps reflect why I advocate for a sawmill-heavy strategy here. Starting this turn with even 1 more sawmill on the board could have allowed the cats to win here. Unfortunately, they don't have any boots available to craft with for that last point. My luck has proven better than the cats, however, as I have both the sword and tea in my hand, which are craftable on both a mouse and fox outcast. And with enough bird cards to swap for the various dominance cards, it's a straightforward and easy path to victory. The Dragon God provides. And that's a lizard game. Thank you all for watching. Remember to hit all that algorithm crap if you want to be notified on those rare occasions I upload videos, and be good to each other.